In this video, we're going to go over populations. And a population is all of the individuals of a species that live together in one place at one time. So we look at, white-tailed deer as being a species, and the population would be the number of white-tailed deer in western Pennsylvania, for example. Populations tend to grow because individuals tend to have more than one offspring, especially in, animals, plants, certainly bacteria. They have many, many more offspring than just one. And population growth can become limited due to resources. And we'll look at population growth models here in just a bit. We have three key features of populations, and these are, we can look at population in relationship to the size, the density, or the dispersion of the population. So let's look at population size first. This is the number of individuals within a population. So we're looking at just the straight number of individuals, like the number of white-tailed deer that we have in western Pennsylvania. If you have a small population, they're more likely to become extinct than if you have a large population. So that's how we have like the endangered species. That means their population numbers are so low, their size is so small, that they are in danger of not being able to successfully reproduce and maintain that species any longer. These small populations can be impacted by random events such as floods, fires, natural disasters, and we also see more inbreeding, and inbreeding can lead to genetic disorders being more prevalent. We see them much more often if the genetics are similar. We have population density, and this is the total population size in a given area. So how dense is that population for that given area? If there's a low density and the individuals are spaced apart, that means they don't live real close to each other, then the reproduction rates are low and we can see a fall in population size. If it's a very high density, meaning there's a lot of these individuals living in a common area, then there's a lot more competition for mates and resources. And so what we can see there is that even though the density may be high at that point, the population size may begin to fall because of lack of resources. And then dispersion is the way the individuals of the population are arranged in an area. And there are three different dispersion patterns. And we don't often think about this as being the case, but this is how populations exist. They can be clumped, they can be uniform, or they can be random. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here we see clumped population, and this is showing you a school of fish. Each of these little areas would be a separate school of fish. We see uniform down here, which is where our penguins are, and what they basically have is sort of uniform personal space. So each one of these dots is an individual penguin, where they have their own area spaced around, but they stay relatively close to each other. And then there's random. There's no real pattern to this population right here. It's just basically, in this case, they're showing you pictures of plants where the wind takes the seeds and the plants begin to grow. So population models, as I said before, we can take a look at how populations are going to grow and kind of predict their growth rate. And if we have the growth rate prediction model, this is basically just a simple population model. It's not the one that we actually use in reality. It's basically just the difference between the birth rate and the death rate. So we say, okay, this number of deer are being born, this number of deer are dying. What is the difference? When we do this, what we usually see is that the population number increases exponentially. So we start here and we go up in what we call a J-shaped curve because it kind of looks like a J. And this shows continuous growth over time. Now, the problem with this is that it's not very realistic because there are definitely limiting factors. So this is a not realistic model. All of the environment has what we call a carrying capacity, and that's the population size that that particular environment can sustain. There are not unlimited resources. So because we have resources, that are limited, such as food, water, shelter, it's going to cause an effect on the population size and density for that matter. We have what we call density-dependent factors, and these are resources become limited as the population grows because there are more individuals and the resources are being used. So as the density increases, these resources start to decrease. And what happens is, after a certain amount of time, it will cause the population to slow down in its growth pattern. We have the logistics population model. This is that population growth keeping declining resources in consideration. This is really the way that we look at population growth models. It's the model that we use. It is basically stating that growth is limited by these density-dependent factors, so it's limited by resources. So this is what we call the S-curve, and this is a more realistic type of growth that we see in real life. And what we see here is that population numbers will continue to grow over time until we reach carrying capacity. And again, that's the number of individuals the environment can hold. What we'll see here is once it reaches carrying capacity, it will tend to level off. Sometimes it may decline and come back again, but always staying right around that carrying capacity. If we see that the population, for example, would do something like this and go above carrying capacity, it will quickly fall back under carrying capacity and tend to level off, such as that. You probably wanted to draw both the S-curve and the J-curve. Make sure you have those in your notes.